Thank you very much for making yourselves available this morning to interact with the African National Congress on what we term Priority 3 in our elections manifesto, where we speak about matters related to social transformation. And I have a panel before you that is going to unpack it all through a statement that is going to be read out. I am here joined by the chairperson of the NEC subcommittee, Comrade Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, to my right, also joined by Comrade Lindiwe Zulu, who is also part of the same subcommittee but also is a deployee in government, social development. Also joined by Comrade Judith Shabalala, also one of our public deployees in the water and sanitation environment. Also joined by one of our key communication messengers. You would have noted that the ANC has unleashed its full resource capacity. So we're going to be having a lot of communicators who are supporting us as the communications machinery of the ANC. Comrade Steve Litsike is one of those comrades, is also going to be part of this conversation, and these comrades to my left are going to be taking questions once Comrade Zweli has read out the ANC statement. With that, let me hand over to Comrade Zweli in the spirit of let's do more together, which is our campaign slogan going forward. Over to you, Comrade Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi, and the members of the panel, members of the media, good morning. We are here to take you through the priority number 3 and related aspects of the manifesto. So at the outset, we would like to take the opportunity to reiterate our condolences to the families, comrades and friends and communities of those who unfortunately lost their lives in the aftermath of a very successful celebratory manifesto launch in Moses Mabhida in eThekwini. 2 weeks ago, the people and members of the People's Movement and South Africa gathered to express overwhelming support for the progress agenda of the African National Congress. Despite naysayers, the response of our people demonstrated that the ANC is the party of choice for all ages, races, genders, and all peoples of South Africa, irrespective of their religious convictions, social standing, and ethnicity. Several months ago, the African National Congress embarked on a program to review the implementation of previous manifestos and evaluate progress made since the dawn of democracy. We recalled the groundbreaking announcements made at the dawn of democracy by President Nelson Mandela in 1994 to implement the Reconstruction and Development Program, the RDP. These included free health care for pregnant women and children under the age of 6, free housing for the poor, and a massive rollout of water, sanitation, and electricity to those previously excluded. These measures included the promotion and protection of rights of various groups, such as workers, women, youth, people with disabilities, children, and senior citizens, based on the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. The 2024 Manifesto builds on the achievements made over the past 30 years of democracy and also to address many challenges that still exist despite those successes. As such, the 2024 Manifesto consolidates the democratic gains since 1994. The African National Congress remains focused on eliminating the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which are the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, faced by our country. To achieve this, several measures will be employed, amongst others, lifting the social wage of every South African, particularly those who are living in poverty, those who are unemployed, those who live in child or women-headed household, and or live in rural and underserviced areas. These measures have over several years resulted in significant gains in which South Africa has reduced poverty rates from 71% in 1993 to under 56% in 2020. Those millions who have benefited from the social wage and government programs are the real tin swallows that the President spoke about during the SONA. Even though South Africa has displayed a modest average 7% inflation rate compared to other nations, some of whom are in the triple digits, today we bring to life the aspirations once expressed by our founding father, Tata Madiba, when he once said, and I quote, "As long as many of our people still live in utter poverty, as long as children still live under plastic covers, as long as many of our people are still without jobs, no South African should rest and wallow in the joy of freedom," unquote. Priority 3 of the People's Manifesto directly engages with the high and unaffordable cost of living currently being experienced in our country. This represents the most pressing bread and butter issue that affects millions across our nation, spanning informal settlements, townships, affluent suburbs, peri-urban and rural areas alike. As a disciplined force of the left, the African National Congress is deeply committed to our revolutionary mission of creating a better life for all our people. The cornerstone of Priority 3 reflects our determination to tackle head-on the high cost of living, to ease the burden, particularly for the downtrodden, the working class poor, and the lumpen proletariat. This priority signifies our unwavering commitment to elevating the most vulnerable segments of our society, addressing economic hardships, and paving the way for a more sustainable, equitable, and inclusive future for all. We shall address the cost of living to render everyday life more affordable for everyone, including workers, the working class poor, unemployed individuals, women-led households, and the middle class by addressing the cost of essentials such as food, housing, healthcare, energy, transport, and wages. In terms of this manifesto, the African National Congress further commits to a structured program to prioritize food security through VAT exemptions of essential food items, the promotion of household food gardens, and accelerated land reform. There will be a strong focus on the provision of basic services for all, particularly the expansion of subsidized services for the indigent and the poor, such as housing, water, and electricity. Equitable access to quality education and healthcare will be strengthened, including the support for the implementation of the National Health Insurance. Other measures will be implemented to ensure affordable student accommodation, a national minimum wage aligned to inflation, and strengthening of existing social grants. With regard to the health and education systems, further elaboration will be provided by the Committee on Education, Health, Science and Technology, who will soon brief the media. That will be the near future. The committee will indicate that regarding education, equality of opportunities has reached near equilibrium, with South Africa having achieved universal access to basic education, including for girl children. Nonetheless, the challenge remains the quality and content of education outcomes, with the average learner performing poorly on key global indicators such as reading and literacy. The 2024 Manifesto commits the African National Congress to work together with our people to further improve education and health outcomes and to develop skills to build capabilities of all citizens, as well as to improve the lives of millions of our people in order to eradicate inequality. Working together, more can be achieved. On the comprehensive social security, in this regard, our manifesto focuses on deepening the comprehensive social security system whilst improving our health and education systems. For with just those three, we would have greatly invested in our shared futures. This briefing focuses attention on the evolving comprehensive social security system and related matters, which address the structural underdevelopment and poverty, particularly in black communities and amongst women, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Many who sit in the opposition benches and beyond have for some time tried to cast aspersions on the comprehensive social security system. Despite the criticism and the efforts by opposition parties to cast aspersions on the comprehensive social security system and by inference the social protection system, we in the African National Congress see this system as a tangible investment towards achieving a quality life for all. They have failed to recognize the positive impact it has provided for over 24 million South Africans. For at the dawn of democracy, there were fewer than 2 million grant recipients. And of course, at that time, all of us would know that the major focus of this was on the white community. Today, there are over 26 million such recipients, the majority of whom are children and those in distress. No doubt, there may have been unintended consequences to the social grants which we are determined to rectify as soon as they surface. We intend to deepen, particularly the child support grant, and move closer towards a basic income grant. We shall have to explore certain conditionalities by which we can encourage other economic and social indicators such as market participation, health, and education, amongst the others. Nonetheless, there are studies abound which confirm that social grants reduce poverty and that the child support grant enhances women's empowerment and control over the well-being of children, as well as enhances the women's household decision-making in financial matters and general household spending. The child support grant has a positive impact on fighting hunger and enhancing school attendance and healthcare. Social grant aid investment expenditure by poor household and job search activities. At over 2,000 rand per month, a single old age or disability grant lifts the household beyond the second decile in the income distribution. The grant enables investment through participating in stokvels, savings, and other investment groups. The manifesto is our commitment, therefore, to strengthen our comprehensive social security system, to reduce poverty, vulnerability, social exclusion, and inequality through social assistance, and to protect the value of social grants for children, the elderly, and persons with disability. Work is underway to explore ways to prevent vulnerability and destitution as a result of the loss of income through social insurance for workers. The ANC-led government also continued the social relief of distress, the SRD grant, benefiting around 7.8 million people, and continues to work on developing targeted basic income support for the most vulnerable within the fiscal constraint. The ANC Manifesto has put in the plans to work together with our partners to do more to consolidate, advance, and modernize our basic services to leave no one behind. And on building the asset base, however, we note that the comprehensive social security system is not enough to sustainably lift the vast majority of South Africans out of poverty. We must find means by which we also build their asset base. Beyond the provision of the social safety net, there's a huge responsibility to create sustainable and independent livelihoods for all able-bodied citizens. This requires the government to strengthen support for skills development, entrepreneurial development, building the small and medium and macro enterprises and cooperatives. Using various instruments, the government will focus on the promotion of self-employment and job creation by these sectors. Economic transformation and financial sector reforms will be utilized to promote the creation of cooperative banks and to ensure development finance institutions are adequately resourced to provide affordable finance for small enterprises and social enterprises, particularly for the unemployed, for the women, for the youth, and other vulnerable groups. Hence, our manifesto also pays attention to ensuring better access to land and ownership, for everything starts with the land. By the way, that was the first act of disposition by the colonial masters. We will therefore accelerate all efforts to ensure that our land redistribution and land restitution programs are accelerated. The Committee on Economic Transformation, Local Government and Legislature and Governance will elaborate on these important aspects, and I think that already has been done by the Economic Transformation Committee. From the advent of the Reconstruction and Development Program, the RDP, the Growth, Employment and Redistribution Strategy, GEAR, and now the National Development Plan, NDP, we have significant strides in policy formulation to advance social upliftment. Various programs will be implemented to promote youth development and reduce various challenges that consume our youth. Youth unemployment remains a crisis. Substance and alcohol abuse are major challenges in our communities. Dagga, heroin, nyaupe, cocaine, tick, and other such substances contribute to criminality, violent and risky behavior, as well as reckless sexual activity, teenage pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and school dropouts. Various social development and employment creation programs will be employed to embrace the energy, the creativity, activism, and imagination of the youth to be prepared as the future of our country. Pro-poor policies such as the providing free health care for the pregnant women and children under 5, offering free housing for the poor and providing clean running water, dignified sanitation, and reliable electricity for previously marginalized have been further solidified in liberated South Africa. These efforts encapsulate the ANC's enduring commitment to fostering a more inclusive and equitable society and leaving no one behind. 30 years later, South Africa is now widely celebrated for the protection of workers' rights, as well as the focus on the rights of women, youth, and people living with disabilities, children, and the LGBTQIA+ community, and other persons. The African National Congress is committed to mobilize all sectors of society to promote freedom, peace, safety in all communities, and particularly the prevention of violence against women and children, the prevention of gender-based violence and femicide. Mobilization of all stakeholders strengthen the protection of rights and dignity of children, youth, older persons, persons with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQI community, and continues the fight for women's emancipation and the creation of a truly non-sexist society. The relevant committees will further elaborate on the strategies to promote and defend the rights of all South Africans against racism, sexism, gender-based violence, homophobia, discrimination, and other intolerances. They will outline actions planned against drugs, organized crime, gender-based violence, and femicide, and the fight to uproot corruption. One of the achievements of our constitutional democracy, which is understated, is the level at which the LGBTQIA+ community is protected in terms of Section 9 of our Constitution. To this end, we are concerned by the recent wave of African states taking anti-human rights approach to sexual orientation. In the spirit of building a better Africa and a better world, we have the view that engagement should be pursued with our sister countries on the continent. On implementation of these provisions of the manifesto, we believe that the strength of the 2024 manifesto is a focus on implementation. Provisions of this manifesto will be translated into programs by relevant sector deployees. The focus of this manifesto is the emphasis on effective planning, implementation, and monitoring. The ANC will ensure that public representatives and the civil service will remain accountable in their conduct and in the performance of their responsibility to fulfill the public mandate. Monitoring will ensure correction of challenges and consequence management to restore public trust and confidence. The ANC commits to ensuring the selection of honest, capable, and dedicated leaders and to rectify past mistakes committed. As movement graced by illustrious figures such as Comrade Nelson Mandela, Comrade Albertina Sisulu, Comrade Yusuf Dadu, Comrade Ruth First, and others, we stand proud as a movement that has always been on the right side of history. These comrades rank amongst the most distinguished revolutionaries of the previous century, embodying the spirit and resilience that have defined the African National Congress. Their contributions to the struggle for freedom, equality, and justice in South Africa have left an indelible mark in our history and continue to inspire generations. We seek to uphold their legacy by doing right by the people of South Africa. The Manifesto document itself is an important labor of love from the National Executive as well as the various provincial executive, regional executive, and branch executive committees together with our tripartite alliance. It therefore articulates our collective aspirations and is a reflection of lessons learned, gains to be consolidated, and a development trajectory to accelerate South Africa onto a revitalized, secure, and sustainable growth path. Consequently, as you know, the Manifesto focuses on 6 cardinal priorities, which includes our jobs plan, building our industries to include an inclusive economy, investing in people, defending democracy and freedom, advancing freedom, and building a better Africa and the world. However, with the effects of COVID-19 and changing global macroeconomic environment, we've recently had some setbacks. We are therefore duty-bound to do more and do faster. This is because, as oath-bearing members of the African National Congress, we know that it's only a caring organization and government that can ensure that all South Africans reach their full potential so they can contribute to the growth of Africa and her children. Therefore, in conclusion, South Africa started the journey to a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous society which guarantees a better life for all, guided along this journey by our Constitution. The National Development Plan sets our immediate national aspirations to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030. Democracy brought together our people from diverse backgrounds to work towards a common vision of a united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and more equal South Africa. Our journey towards social cohesion, social solidarity, and national unity must therefore continue. The ANC calls on all women, youth, urban, business, rural, labor, faith-based organizations, civil society, traditional leaders, taxi associations, the LGBTQI plus people, and people with disabilities, the middle strata, intellectuals, military veterans, students, our diaspora, sports, arts, and cultural workers, traditional healers, to join us to defend and advance our freedom so that together we can do more as active citizens of our beloved South Africa. Working together with our people, we believe the African National Congress possesses the political will, the governance experience, and the wherewithal to get things done. We dare not fail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Zweli. Let us do more together. We present this aspect, this priority number 3 in our manifesto, a manifesto that is accompanied by an implementation plan, as emphasized by the chair of the NEC Subcommittee on Social Transformation. At this point, I'd like to turn to you, members of the media, and take any questions that you may have. I've got a very formidable panel next to me, and I'm sure that we will be able to address any of your concerns. I'm going to start on my right this time around. I'll start with you, my brother. Let's go.
Good morning. Raymond from Netwerk 24. I just want to know, could you outline the specific strategies that the ANC plans to implement to tackle high cost of living?
If you could just amplify your
Okay.
voice, including identifying yourself. I think we're struggling to hear you from this
Okay.
end.
Is it better now?
It's a bit better.
Okay. Raymond from Netwerk 24. Could you outline the specific strategies that the ANC plans to implement, and how does this differ from past strategies? And are there any immediate relief measures being considered? And the second one, with the rising inflation being a significant contributor to the cost of living, what measures is the ANC implementing without hampering economic growth?
What measures is the ANC implementing without hampering economic growth?
Yes.
And as far as dealing with the cost of living?
Yes.
Okay. I hope the panel has heard that. I'm going to proceed. Over to you there.
Good morning. My name is Katlego Logodi from the SABC. I just wanted to find out if there's been any consideration around VAT exemptions. Is there somewhat of a strategy that you're going to be, amassing? Because we know very well that social movements have been calling for a relief of this nature, even going into budget. They were expecting to hear something around exemptions where VAT is concerned. And also the issue of, social grants. We often hear opposition parties and other people saying that it's unsustainable, and it's an indictment on the ANC to say that you failed to create jobs over time. Hence, we see a lot of people then, shielded through the social security space, and it's a booming space there compared to what we've seen over the years in terms of the creation of jobs. Is that really an indictment on your end, meaning that you haven't really kept up in terms of your responsibilities as government to ensure the creation of jobs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those two questions are noted. I am going to ask the panel to just react to those for the now, and then I'll come to my left if there are any questions this side. Okay, can I just take this one, last one in the first round? Yourself there, my sister.
Okay, my name is Naledi and I am from the SABC. My question is with regards to public sector wages. We understand that the public sector wage bill is now ballooning, but when you speak to unions, they put the blame squarely on government, saying that, in terms of the ministries, that's where, the ballooning is happening and not necessarily down on the ground in terms of the workers. Will you be considering, improving wages in that regard beyond the inflation link? What kind of conversations really are you having with unions in this regard? And then in terms of the SRD grant, we did see that it was mentioned. Of course, we're expecting it for this year, but there's no indication about what's happening in the years to come. Is it going to be changed to a basic income grant? What exactly is the thinking around this particular grant?
Thank you very much, Naledi. At this point, I'm going to turn to the panel. I noted a number of questions that have to do with our approach towards comprehensive social security. I'm going to ask Comrade Lindiwe to react, and if there is a need for an addition from any of our comrades here, please feel free to do so. And then I'll ask Comrade Zweli to summarize some of the questions that are related to the statement. Comrade Lindy.
Thank you very much, Comrade Hlengi, and thank you very much for the questions. I will start with the quickest and easiest one, which is SABC Naledi, with regard to the SRD, which is the 350 that we are currently paying. I think the President already made this statement and we've made the statement already a while back, that the SRD is a stepping stone for the government of the African National Congress into the basic income grant. And that with regard to the basic income grant, a whole lot of research has been done, not only by the Department of Social Development, but it has also been done by other organizations who are supporting our communities, who are also supporting government in finding solutions at dealing with a wide range of issues that also include the issue of growing the economy, increasing the employment of our communities, and particularly focusing on the young people, because if you look at the SRD in terms of the data, the majority of the people who are getting the SRD 350 is amongst the youth. And it is also for this reason that as a department, we are not only looking at just payment of the grants, we are part and parcel of the entire government that looks for solutions to the growing of the economy, to linking the grant beneficiaries also to economic opportunities, because it is fact that the majority of South Africans want to see themselves either in a job or want to see themselves being the ones that are creating the jobs. However, it is a fact that we need to cushion South Africans who find themselves in the cracks, who do not have the jobs. So we will continue paying the 350, as was also indicated by the Minister of Finance when he made his presentation. But with regard to the basic income grant, we've gone so far as putting together the policy proposals, which also include options in terms of funding and all. What would that be? We have not concluded that aspect, and that once we have done with that, we will have to bring it back to the African National Congress, both to the Committee on Social Transformation, but also to the Committee on Economic Transformation, because the two have to speak to each other. But I also want to make the statement that this whole issue of the 350 SRD and moving into the basic income grant must not be seen in isolation of the overall comprehensive social security for South Africans in general. And our focus obviously is with regard to the most vulnerable. But when you talk about comprehensive social security, you are speaking about how South Africans can be protected irrespective of which level they are at, by ensuring that you have a system that pays attention, but more specifically pays attention to the most vulnerable. With regard to the sustainability of the social grants, I want to say to you, the African National Congress have sustained the grants since 1994. When we took over power, there were times when the economy was not necessarily doing very well, but one thing the African National Congress was very clear about is that you cannot expose our people consistently to vulnerability and not respond to that. And so for those who are saying it's unsustainable, look at the entire history from the time that we decided to expand social grants broadly, not only social grants for the elderly as it was before. We extended the grants both for the elderly, to people with disabilities, to child support grant, and the bulk of our grants actually goes to child support grant. And one of the reasons why we are wanting to link grant beneficiaries to economic opportunities is because the young women who are having the children, we believe that both the mother and the father need to take responsibility for the children, but government needs to create a conducive environment. How does government do that? It goes to the first point where we were asked about the strategies for sustaining our economy and how different is it and what measures do we have. The measures of ensuring that our economy grows are those measures which the African National Congress has been very clear about. How do we grow the economy? What are the sectors that we need to focus on that will assist us to grow the economy? And therefore, those strategies are tried and tested in the past 30 years. And it is fact that while they are tried and tested, some of those strategies that we had in place did not really yield the results. Hence, we are saying we are a government that has experienced 30 years, and the 30 years have exposed us to the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the 30 years now are looking at the next 30 years, what we are going to do. With regard to VAT exemptions, I think that the economic cluster will be able to expand even more on that, because already we do have some products that are VAT exempt, particularly for the vulnerable and particularly for the poor. So in short, grants are going to continue, because this country has an obligation, and this organization has an obligation in as far as the Constitution of South Africa says that we need to pay attention to the most vulnerable. Irrespective of how the economy is doing, you cannot expose your people to conditions of poverty forever and then say no, because the economy is not doing very well. We believe, as the African National Congress, whatever little we have as a government, we must make sure that it responds to the felt needs of our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to ask Comrade Steve at some point to reflect on aspects in our statement that talks about inclusion. But I'm going to turn to the chair of the NEC subcommittee, Comrade Zoli.
Thank you very much. The question around what are these steps, I think the major issue for us is trying to protect food security, to ensure that people have got access to nutrient foodstuff. In particular, the VAT exemption should focus on staple food. You know, the carbohydrates that people utilize on a day-to-day basis, particularly, you know, that's maize and rice and those kinds of food, and then the source of proteins, eggs, milk, and so on. These are the areas that need a lot of protection, and therefore there'll have to be a consideration around those types of food stuff, but obviously you would need a standardized list that covers all of those. But effectively that looks at essential items that every house requires, bread and all of that. So I think you would therefore need a properly structured list that covers a lot of that. The other issue is the promotion of community and home gardens. A lot of people can actually, you know, get homegrown fresh vegetables at no cost, because they produce them themselves. They're very nutritious, and therefore it's an issue that needs to be promoted. It's a standard, you know, source of easy access to affordable food, as it were. Then there's also a focus on dealing with the issue of price fixing. We've seen how some of the big companies have colluded in you know, fixing the prices and therefore artificially raising the cost of commodities. This will be dealt with, and I think in the past, Competition Commission was actually primed to deal with this so as to protect the poor. Then there's a whole basket of basic services which have to be, in the case of the poor, the indigent have to be protected. Water, of course, housing for everyone who would get the government housing, the subsidized housing, we know that those are free. But issues of water, electricity, the free basic services have to be looked at, and therefore we need to sharpen the ability of the municipalities to identify those particular communities, create a list or an indigent list of people who will not, be under pressure because they are unable to afford those paying for those services, and yet they are essential. So that those kinds of issues are the ones that we're going to be focusing on. Obviously, the cost of transport is another one, and in this case, the issue of the transport subsidy is something that government will also have to work on and emphasize. Around the area of national minimum wage, the focus will be about trying to make sure that it is sensitive to inflation, and so it doesn't actually create a distorted situation where the national minimum wage is not able to give relief in line with with inflation. Then the solar power, there's also some subsidy that has to be considered at that level, apart from the installation fees that have been also introduced. So the other area which is also a matter of concern raised by the youth and the student is the student accommodation that has to be kept, because there's a lot of price gouging that has been identified at that particular level. So these would largely be some of the areas that we have to focus on in dealing with the cost of living. Then you raise another issue in relation to, I think my colleague here, my comrade has dealt with it in a way, and that is the issue of the sustainability of the comprehensive social security system, and that it might be a reflection of a dependent state that's been created, and he says it has been addressed. But let me say that we always see that the comprehensive social security system is an intervention to deal with crisis. But we have raised at the same time the need for us to focus on the financial reforms that have to go into promoting cooperative banks, small business banks, access to loans, so that our township economies, so that small businesses, cooperatives can actually create jobs and create employment, and whilst at the same time creating a sustainable life. This for us is the way to go, and it will be also at the back of a broader base of economic activities that will be able to see our economic growth. So the concern as well about the economic growth is true. We have been affected by COVID-19, but apart from that, I think all of us would have loved to see a much better growth than what we're seeing now, with job creation also associated with it. So the whole strategy has been outlined in relation to how we want to focus on industrialization, obviously at the back of having corrected the energy security issues, and also the focus on various commodities that should be looked at for value addition, and also looking at mechanisms to encourage production and industrialization inside the country, so that you don't just export raw products, as it were. All around these issues, we have to look at, we've heard quite a bit about the new areas such as green energy opportunities that we have to deal with. We've had the cannabis industry with its width and breadth. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at, how to actually help to broaden the base of our economy, but also to increase economic growth. So there would obviously have been a little more discussion at that level. We raised the issue of accelerating land redistribution, which is also very important as a basic asset that we need for people to actually begin to create their own assets. So let me say, we consider this work as work that is in progress. We're focused on the issue of implementation, just to mark the fact that we have heard and we've listened to the criticism of how we've got good policies, but there's been poor implementation. That is why I'd actually raised the aspect here that says that the issue of planning, implementation, monitoring, so that there's consequence management, so that there's correction in time before we miss the deadlines. All of these are part of the lessons that we have learned of what over the years we've actually been receiving criticism about. I hope that does help to clarify the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am going to invite you, Mapaseka, just a very brief reflection on this aspect of in our manifesto that talks to the gender agenda, that talks to intersectionality, that talks to how South Africa is a better country today as a result of policies related to inclusion of people.
Thank you so much, Comrade Matlenge. And I think we have to characterize many of the issues with the history of a very colonial legacy that has created instability around gender issues, around race issues, but also around the debates on human rights. And I think we've come a long way as South Africa, and we've come a long way as the ANC that has taken not a leap of faith, but taken the bull with its horn. And we've done it over the 112 years of fighting for justice. And we fought for justice with many elements of bringing women, youth, the elderly, the intellectual, to feed on the root of justice. Now, what does it really mean? Because you have to underpin the inequalities that consistently people experience. Women are still in the bearing end and experiencing these inequalities, stigma and discrimination, whether you're talking about the pay gaps, which is what we need to really breach in all different sectors, private sector, public sector, communities. Pay gap is what we aim to breach and close. Secondly, it's all the other dynamics that speaks about how we mobilize society, working with the interfaith communities, not only just Christians, not only just Muslims, all interfaith groups we have been mobilizing, we have been working with to resolve some of the moral, social fabric that we're dealing with in society. But as ANC, we also have continued to work with traditional leaders as custodians of our culture, as custodians working with people in society. We have really looked at that kind of complex issues of how do we look at the dynamics of land, of ownership, of society, and also how we coexist even within society. But what are some of the intersectional issues that we should not run away from? And I think our priority 3 expresses a very clear aspect of addressing some of the nuances of social realities. The LGBTI community, that we have been very clear as a country, and we have been very clear as the ANC in our manifesto that was launched by on the 24th of February, that says we leave no one behind. LGBTI community are members and are citizens of this country with equal rights and who will have equal opportunities. But we've also prioritized the agenda of moving policy to action. What does it mean in daily reality where LGBTI people should access services, should have equal opportunities to prosper? But our own effort doesn't really end only with what we do in South Africa. We have seen the pockets of growing anti-homosexuality laws in many countries. The recent is what happened 2 days ago, and our chairperson spoke about it. And these efforts, we will use all our relations in these countries to really converse diplomatically, because we will respect sovereignty. But what we will not do is accept when things come at the cost of life. We want a better Africa, and that's the agenda we are prepared to really build on together with Africans as a whole. Now, other priorities is people with disability. We have been clear and we have been consistent. We've seen, even when you speak about social protection, when you speak about the economic growth, we have been driving and leading together with people with disability, the inclusion in the workspace, in schools, where we do not want to see divisions anywhere, everywhere in our country. And I think our consistent message with working with society, working with women, working with youth, and prioritizing liberation and economic liberation, in economic growth and economic contribution by all. That's the priority we have been working around. But I want to speak and raise two other issues that really will still cost us. Gender-based violence in our country is still rife. And I think we've seen quite a lot of efforts. If you were to reflect 10 years ago, where we knew just about 30 seconds a woman would get raped. And we've reduced this, and we've seen actually the efforts that yield results, the prevention effort that yield results, that we are not just speaking about how we address gender-based violence and femicide, but we are actually seeing those steps that are taking place. One, we cannot accept, and as ANC, we will not tolerate continuation of violence, which is perpetuated by the very same toxic masculinity in society. But man has to come to the table. Last year, we launched a Raising a Boy Child and Working with Men campaign as the ANC. And we worked with various stakeholders to then say, we will prioritize, as long as men in all their diversity stand up, we will prioritize to end violence against women, children, and all the vulnerable groups. So ANC has that experience, and we must not take this progress for granted and leave it and become complacent. We are actually moving to then say, this manifesto is actionable to speak to every South African in their diversity. Our social transformation package, our economic growth package, our job creation approach will turn around the social challenges that we deal with on a daily basis. And that's what we stand for, and that's what we call each and every South African to work with us on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I do want to check if we have any questions from yourselves, colleagues. I've got newsroom, and I've got my brother there at the back. I'm also going to invite Comrade Judith to say a word or two about the interventions we are making through our manifesto and through the work we're actually doing to intervene in local government, including in hung municipalities, to bring dignity and restore dignity for our people through water and sanitation, because that is a step in lending dignity to our people. But I'm going to take Junior over there, and then my brother right there at the back, and I've got a third hand here, and that will be the last round, colleagues. Newsroom.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Newsroom Africa. The question is, I know there's already been a disclaimer that when it comes to VAT exemption, the economic cluster will
Thank you very much. That is a very straightforward question. I will leave that to the chair of the subcommittee. Let me turn to you, my brother.
Norman Masungwini from City Press. Maybe to add or follow up on what my colleague Junior said. The criticism and the growing concern among many South Africans, especially the middle class, is that the forever growing number of recipient of SRD grant, rather than creating the creation of job opportunity, is placing taxpayers, which mainly are the middle class, into distress. Is that not a worrying factor for the ANC, that once the middle class who are carrying the economy, largely so, start rebellious against the policies, won't that be a threat to the comprehensive social security system? Has there been that discussion, and what are the solutions to that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave that to Comrade Lindiwe. And then the last one over here.
Katlego again from the SABC. Mine would go to Comrade Judith, because she's going to touch on municipalities. Looking at what happened last night in Ekurhuleni, as the ANC, what would be your reaction to what is seemingly, culminating or actually erupting there at local government level? As I know very well that there've been a lot of, a lot of people just slamming the activities of members of legislature. What would be the ANC's position looking at what happened there in Ekurhuleni, and mainly also around other municipalities where we've seen same chaotic scenes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the last question. I'm going to start with Comrade Judith, followed by Comrade Lindy, and then Comrade Zweli will close us out.
I hope not to turn this to a water and sanitation press briefing. Thank you so much, Comrade Mahlengi, Comrade Kabazela, the chair of the subcommittee, and of course, Comrade Lindy and Comrade Steve. And I greet you all, Ndi Machirun, Kadwanga Machirun. You've given me a task, one, to really, I'll come to that point later on, but Comrade Mahlengi had asked me already to speak to it, to say what are we doing and what is happening around issues of hung municipalities. Since Comrade Senzo Mkhunu has been the Minister of Water and Sanitation, there's a number of interventions and focus area that water has been focused in. One is the issues of transformation, Comrade Mahlengi, around issues of the water boards that we are seeing today, that we have done something about it. We have turned the water boards from 9 to 7 today, and those water boards in the areas of, in different areas and provinces where, for instance, in KZN, we have merged Umgeni Utugela to make it one water board, so that it's able to have an intimate focus around the issues in KZN and many other areas, Lepele, Northern Kumbi, board in Limpopo, and so forth. Now, it's not just only about the transformation. The Constitution employs us to ensure that we give people water. Water is a basic right, is enshrined in the Constitution, is the people's rights. Now, you will also appreciate through this huge spatial plannings, especially in the areas around rural provinces, wherein the infrastructure did not take cognizance of that, in such that it never ensured that people have got tap and have got water within their own yards. And that's part of the transformation and what we are talking about. There is legislative requirements that we are also looking into to ensure at a national level we are able, as water and sanitation, when crisis erupts and happens, we are able to intervene, because currently the water and sanitation, it is a functionality through the Municipal Structures Act and Systems Act that is given to the municipalities, and there are water service users and so forth. So what they do, it's them that are responsible to ensure that they give people water within their own municipalities. Now, as water and sanitation, we also appreciate that part of our duty is to regulate and make sure that this municipality, for instance, they provide clean clean potable water insofar as us making the tests in terms of regulations and so forth. And Water and Sanitation, Comrade Mahlengi would have released their blue drops to say in all this country, in all municipalities, which ones are complying, which ones are not. And those ones that are not complying, then what we do, then we come in and we act. There's also a focus in Water and Sanitation on infrastructure and the interventions. And I'll tell you that in Gauteng currently, the interventions that we are doing in the Val through the rainwater to address the sewer pollution that you also know it exists and the problem is there. It also coordinates rainwater in all municipalities to manage the water supply situation entirely in Gauteng and minimizing the disruption, what we call, or the disruption on the supply, the underlying causes which are that of Lesotho Highlands project that you would know about, that has been delayed for over 10 years and today there is movement around it and phase 2 already is happening. And coupled with increased demand for water in Gauteng and increased physical losses in municipality distribution system, and this is the interventions that we are also doing. You'll appreciate that part of those municipalities, you would have it in Tshwane, wherein even when we had the cholera and outbreak in the Hammanskraal situation, we had to intervene as Water and Sanitation at a level where we are saying that this is a crisis, we must intervene. And when we intervened, the issues around coalition governments are really not sustainable. And what happens is that previously, the previous DA mayor was very arrogant, who didn't want Water and Sanitation to come and assist insofar as where the problem was, which is Rooival, which is their responsibility. But nonetheless, the current mayor agreed, and there was an agreement that was entered into with Minister Senzo Mkhunu to ensure that now we're going to collaborate and work. Tshwane needed to go to a council and approve a budget from their own side so that they make money available for them to be able to assist with these treatment plants. And indeed, they've done that. They've been able to secure that. Even from our side, we also have been able to secure that, given Magali's Water, a contractor is already contracted, available on site to start with the construction and assist there by the temper plant so that the people of Hammanskraal can receive the water, Comrade Mahlengi. Now, in Limpopo, DWS is working with Mopani District Municipality to implement a major project to supply water to villages in the Giyani area, which has never had water at all, completely. And now department is also coordinating the implementation of the Olifants Ebenezer project to supply additional water to Polokwane and other areas. And the department working with Sekhukhune, a district municipality, to complete the Mutse and Nebu bag water scheme, which is also will provide water to communities which has never had water. Another intervention we're doing is in Mpumalanga. So I want to reflect, Comrade Mahlengi, because this manifesto employs us to say that we need to intervene. Now we are speaking to the manifesto, and these are short-term, Comrade Zweli, that these are the interventions that has been currently happening, that one would also wish media can also cover extensively so that we show you the status, where we come from, what manifesto employs us to do, and what has been the commitment and what have we done. Now, in Mpumalanga, the department coordinates the Loskop project to build a pipeline from Loskop Dam to Tembisile Hani, a local municipality, really to ensure more communities in that area to be provided with water. It's also supporting the Lekwa municipality. You will know that Lekwa municipality is also one of those ailing municipalities. But through this implementation, the range of projects that we are pumping in there to improve this water supply and sanitation service in that area. Now, in the area of KZN, we are quite actively involved. In fact, weekly we're in KZN. As we speak, Minister is there in KZN, supporting Umkanyagute, Uthukela, Amajuba, Ugu, Umzinyathi, the King Cetshwayo, Umgungundlovu, Umsunduzi municipalities to improve their water and sanitation services. This involved the whole region funding that we have made available of infrastructure, improving projects, as well as management of support, the drawing on the resources on the Umngeni Uthukela Water Board. It also coordinating the Mandlangazi bulk water supply scheme to supply water to those communities which has not been previously supplied with this water in Zululand, Umkanyagute and Hlabiza. And Comrade Zweli, you will know what we're talking about. The people in those provinces have never had the luxury or rather the pride to be able to be restored dignity and having water. Now, we keep on saying, Comrade Mahlengu, water should not be politicized. And I think that's the point, to show the caring ANC government that we say to these areas when we go to them, in these municipalities that we don't govern, especially in the areas of KZN and the northern Zululand and so forth. We're working very well with those mayors, the IFP mayors. We sit with them, we do imbizos with them weekly on end, because we said to them, right now, the situation it demands our people must have water. Now we keep on cautioning so that we don't have situations where when it comes to water, you politicize it. You don't give people in terms of water tankering, what happens in that business. If a person is an ANC person, the water tanker does not come there. It passes there because the governing is not the ANC. So it's those things that we've been able to resolve today, and we can say it with pride that we're able to say to them, let us work together. The pipelines we've done, we've built reservoirs as we're speaking in those areas of the Zululand. Now, in the Northern Cape, we're also coordinating the implementation of various infrastructure projects to assist the Salt Lake municipality to resolve water supply and disruption. It is also funding the projects to improve sanitation in several municipalities in the Northern Cape and the Northwest project. We've coordinated what we called a project called Operation Bulela Metsi, really to expedite and prioritize the projects that we have on issues of reliability of water across the provinces. Comrade Zweli had asked me to speak about issues of the bigger and the long term around the municipalities. I assure you I'll finish. You'll think that I've spoken too long. It's because I speak fast. Because if I was speaking slow, you'll capture that I've not spoken too long. Now, the Manifesto, Comrade Mahlengu, promises us to ensure proper planning and investment to address this immediate and future sanitation needs. And ANC in the Manifesto commits to complete in the coming 5 years the major dams and water schemes to ensure sustainable access to water to this growing population. This includes the Umzimvubi Dam, Umkomazi Dam, the raising of the Clan William Dam, we've done that in the Western Cape, Zanini Dam walls, the Loskop, Pilanesberg Dam, Mandlagazi, the Guyana and Somo water schemes, and the Oliphant Management Model water scheme. We have in the past alluded to really build this bulk infrastructure to ensure that we add to the additional surface for issues of storage capacity in good time. Maybe just to close it with your question, the ANC position in Gauteng, these are NEC members, they can speak about the coalition and the ANC position in Gauteng. I'm sure it's got its own leadership also to speak to that. But for our side, what we want to say, because these coalitions, when they are hung like that, they're not sustainable, they're really hampering on the progress, specifically around service delivery. So you can imagine when there's a protest and municipality can't take a decision, they can't even pass their budget, there's always disruption. What happens to water? Because everybody, every day needs water for economic activity, for many agricultural and so forth. So this disruption, it disrupts water, and we can't allow that type of a situation. And we hope that indeed the ANC will deal with that. Thank you, Comrade Mahlengu.
I will ask Comrade Lindy. You didn't speak too long, Comrade Judith. Thank you for the passion as well in terms of the work. Over to you, Comrade Lindy.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengu. Passion is always necessary and always needed if you want to be able to deliver on what you are. And I'm speaking from experience, and I share these experiences with the young people all the time. You know, I wanted to get back to the issue of zero rated, because I did answer the question, but maybe because it came back again, we must have an appreciation that staple foods like bread, veggies, rice, milk, there is a whole list of the basic foods that are zero rated in South Africa. And those are your brown bread, maize meal, samp, mealy rice, dried beans, lentils, pilchards, dairy powder, vegetables, fruit vegetables, vegetable oil. In fact, you would find that when we do food parcels, where we need to do food parcels, particularly where people have been affected either by disasters, and we have to then step up and assist. That's what you would find in our food parcel. I also want to respond to, I hope I understood you well, Norman, because let me, going back to the VAT exemptions, those are consistent discussions in the African National Congress, because you cannot, on the one hand, be talking about supporting the most vulnerable and trying to make it easy for them, while at the same time appreciating that the economy is not doing very well and it's slowly starting to rise. And I'm hoping that with all the plans that the rest of the committees will speak about will show a bit of a sign of a growth in as far as the economy is concerned. So we will consistently, and particularly from those departments that deal with the most vulnerable. So you'll have really engagements, tough engagements within the African National Congress. I can tell you that even the issue of the 350, don't think that it's just automatic. Lindiwe Zulu will go there, will come to the STC and have a conversation and think that's going to be easy. We are asked to be very conscious of the public purse. We are always asked to be very conscious of what is possible and what is not possible. But because we've been given the mandate, and the African National Congress being given the mandate by the people of South Africa who vote the African National Congress into power, we have to have these dynamic engagements. And one thing we do not want to lose, particularly from this cluster, in as far as addressing and responding to the needs of our people, is to continue engaging in as far as VAT exemption, where is it possible and where is it not possible. But right now, you can Google the list of things, of products that are VAT exempted in South Africa. Now, Norman, the growing criticism and concerns by the middle class, if I understood you very well, you'll correct me, related to the 350. I can tell you that many of South Africans who are unemployed, and I must make this statement, that 350 can never be an amount that is catering for the needs of people who are unemployed. Let us start there. And we must also go back to the historical background of why we came up with the 350 as was announced by the president. It was simply because COVID-19 made it impossible for the majority of South Africans, many of whom wake up in the morning and go and hustle on the street one way or the other. You find people that do garden, you find people that are domestic workers, you find people that are selling products out on the streets in order to sustain themselves and sustain their livelihoods. There was a complete shutdown, and those people could not get any money from anywhere, while some people continued to receive their salaries at the end of the day, whether they were at home or not at home, they continued to receive their salaries. So the 350 was just an amount that was supposed to assist and hold people at that short period of time. However, let me clarify this, that when the first applications happened, it reflected exactly the number which is normally given to us by Stats SA when they give us data about how many people are unemployed in South Africa. So the start of the SRD was supposed to be only for those who had lost their jobs during COVID-19. However, when the department, as well as government in general, was looking at the numbers of the people who applied versus those who had lost their jobs, and doing an analysis of how do we cushion our people, we felt, let us not even deal with the issue of those who had lost their jobs. Let us deal with South Africans who are completely and utterly unemployed, many of whom actually had lost hope that they can be able to go out and look for jobs, post COVID-19. It was for this reason that then government decided, let us not only focus on those who lost their jobs, let us focus on everybody that doesn't have a job so that they can be able to get the 350, little as it is, but let us give them the 350. And you can see that we have consistently extended the 350 despite the fact that COVID-19, supposedly COVID-19 ended. But we are looking now from a comprehensive social security point of view to say, COVID-19 taught us some lessons. We introduced 350. We covered more than the people who had lost their jobs. We covered even those that never had jobs. Hence the continuation of the 350, and it extended even until 2025. And so when you talk about the middle class being concerned about the 350, I don't exactly understand how do you connect the two, because the 350 was specifically to respond to COVID-19, but now it is responding to unemployment. And the extension thereof and the increase thereof, if the increase happens, because as a Department of Social Development, we are saying, government, you are cushioning the unemployed, but there is an issue of how much can the 350 procure, how much can people get out of the 350, and what else can government do, considering, of course, the fact that the budget is not very good. But we believe that the government of the African National Congress has a capacity and a capability of being creative and ensuring that this 350 is increased and it supports our people more, because we worry about what it can procure. One of the things I can tell you is that we realized as a Department of Social Development, not only ourselves, even the research that was done by people, was that families who have 2 or 3 people maybe in the family who are not employed, they put the 350 together. And they say, what do we need most? And then they go and procure what they need most. But lastly, with regard to the comprehensive social reforms, I think it's important for us not to narrow this whole issue of comprehensive social security, because comprehensive social security is defined even by the international organization, is defined even by the ILO as a system that needs to be used by any given country to cushion and protect its people across the board, not just the vulnerable. And I indicated in my presentation that we've gone to very far, to a point that the green paper, which has been meandering along the way, the green paper has finally been approved by Cabinet to be published so that it can get the public comments. And I'm sure the public comments will speak broadly to ensuring universal access to social security. And when we speak about universal access, we are talking from those who have, those who don't have, and those who are finding themselves below the poverty line. We have to be able to ensure that as a nation and as a country, our social assistance programs are properly integrated so that they are not in piecemeal. They must be brought under one roof so that we can also be able to see where the weaknesses are and where are we even losing money in as far as that is concerned. And so I think social security, I can also say, is an economic stabilizer, especially during crises. We've had crisis of COVID-19. We don't know what other crises are going to come through. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question, I think, by Naledi about increasing public sector wages in line with inflation. The reality is that we don't take a decision upfront before outside any form of bargaining processes. So we have to wait for the normal bargaining process to have the parties involved to decide or to discuss on their proposals. And then, of course, you got the mandate from government that will ultimately help to close the gap. Sometimes there's agreement. Sometimes, as you know, you would be the first to know if there was no agreement, as you know what normally happens. So whilst we note the fact that there would be a need to consider issues of inflation, there's obviously another need to balance the public purse with the rest of the developmental needs of the society, and therefore government has to create that kind of balance. So we cannot take a decision up front to say this is what we're going to do, but we have to wait for that process. It's a give and take process, and the fact that it still endures means that it does work for both parties. So I think let's take it that there are no predetermined ideas about it. We actually have to wait for the process. The junior raised a question about fuel levy. The question is whether we do discuss it in the ANC, and the issue is yes. We discuss it, not just the issue of fuel levy, but also we discuss the whole issue of the cost of living and various contributors to that, and this every now and again becomes a debate. As my comrade is saying, it does become a very heated debate, because the question is what else can be done to shield society from the rising cost, particularly driven by the fuel levy. But as we know, that is a very complex formula, this one of the fuel levy, with Central Energy Fund also having a major role to play, and the decisions from the Treasury, because it's part of the tax packages that have to be taken into account to raise revenue. So it doesn't become an issue that you can only deal with in a political meeting, but we have to bring in the factors that are important to be considered as the decision makers have to take the decision. But the reason that it was taken at the level of Central Energy Fund, it was mainly because the idea of avoiding unnecessary manipulation is a very sensitive subject. So the ANC does discuss that, but we don't really take a decision on the matter. The decision has to be taken by the relevant authorities. You must have obviously reported, I see one of the media actually was reporting that in the annual budget speech on Wednesday, Kotongwana said government was mindful of the already high cost of living and the impact of fuel prices on food, and therefore in this regard we're proposing no increase in the general levy for 2024-25. So it does become a factor, and in this case it did become part of the minister's speech. The other issue that has been raised has been dealt with quite adequately in relation to the threat of the middle class being rebellious on issues of social security. I think one of the things that's very important amongst South Africans is that of social solidarity, wherein there's a need to always consider those who are worse off and affected by poverty, inequality, unemployment, and therefore as South Africans we have to find a way of assisting each other to make sure that the government can provide a mechanism for the rest of the others to cope. So that, I think, should be our approach as we deal with the issue of the SRD and other social security issues. But we are again mindful of the fact that these are interventions in crisis. Even social security, the old age pension is because you can't do anything. You have to actually deal with supporting someone who has worked for most of their lives and are no longer able to support themselves. When those who are living with disabilities and the children who are coming from destitute families, all of these are considerations that come into being. But I did mention here that we actually are focusing on the creation of a sustainable, independent livelihood. And that's why then we're saying that there are a number of financial reforms and economic transformation policy approaches to promote skills development, to promote financial inclusion, to promote access to finance for SMMEs and cooperatives, so that not only do we look for job creation from the big companies, but we also want the small entrepreneurs to also create their own jobs at their level. So that's a way. I think it's going to take us many years to get to the right spot, but where we are quite clear that the social grants are crisis intervention. The sustainability has to come from creating entrepreneurship, creating jobs, and also involving everyone to be productive in actually supporting the economy. So that is the approach that we're taking now. There would be criticism, really, that would be a matter of debate, because we haven't said there shall never be any way of creating sustainable livelihood. We are saying that process has to be followed, but because it's going to be a process that's evolving over a period, it's important. You would know that, of course, many years ago, there was actually a law that prevented African people from doing business. It was a law you'd be charged if you're involved in business. And slowly, the trading craft and skills actually was eroded in some of the communities. You have to build it up, you have to support it with market, technical training, and a whole lot of other supporting measures, with government also leveraging on its procurement capacity to deal with supporting in this sector. So that would be our issue. The last point relates to the disruption in Eguruleni. As the ANC, we condemn the disruption. We actually believe that the parties have to take responsibility for a harmonious management of internal tensions and differences of opinion in any municipality. That we have gone past the era of political intolerance, where violence is seen as a means of resolving issues. And on that basis, therefore, we do believe that the parties involved need to actually be brought together, so that they must, in the next session, not only make amends of what that disruption, but also make sure that in future there's a harmonious management of different views, because this is a democracy. We have come from that history. Many years ago, when we were involved in the resolution of tensions, in particular in KwaZulu-Natal, one of the issues that were important was to create a structure that would manage the tensions and the differences of opinion inside the governance structure. But I think all in all, it does display to us the challenges that we face by having hung municipality. And from that point of view, as the African National Congress, we appeal to our people, the voters, to give as much support to the African National Congress, so that we do not have to have hung municipalities where there is indeterminate authority, and therefore these kinds of disruptions. We think that when the hung municipality and the coalition governments are unable to cooperate, it does actually cast a raw deal to the communities who are waiting for service delivery. I think it's important for us to always understand that at the end of the day, it's no longer about the interest of individual parties. It's about the interest of all our people out there, that we have to work together and promote service delivery in the interest of all the voters who would have brought us into governance. And from that point of view, therefore, we would hope that this is not going to be a trend that we're going to be finding in all other different municipalities. At this point, we want to just say to you, thank you very much for sharing with us on how we see this manifesto priority number 3, and we also want to indicate that we believe that things will be different with the African National Congress focusing very strongly on the issues of implementation of these programs, and also that we remain a force for change as the African National Congress. We have to continue to champion the unfinished business of transforming South Africa for the better. So with that, we really hope that our people will continue to welcome and receive positively the message from the African National Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. At this point, I know this has been the longest presser that we've had. It's in the nature of the social transformation agenda in the ANC and in the country that it is the case. I'd like to thank the panel led by Comrade Zweli, Comrade Lindiwe, Comrade Mapasega, and Comrade Judith. With that, I'd like to especially thank you, members of the media, for making the time to interact with us. We will issue an advisory about the next briefing on other priorities of the manifesto. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.